You know, in the world of Cold War intelligence, the biggest secrets aren't always kept from your enemies. Sometimes they're kept from everyone else. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on one of the great geopolitical mysteries of the 20th century. So, meet Vela 6911. It's part of a fleet of satellites the U.S. launched way back after the Partial Test Ban Treaty in '63. And its job? Well, it had one job: be a silent guardian, a watchdog, looking for the telltale signs of a secret nuclear test. By 1979, yeah, it was getting old, well past its expiration date, but the important parts were still working. And this is the key to the whole story: the bang meter. Now, it's not a camera, it doesn't take pictures. Think of it more as a specialized sensor that just measures light, really, really fast changes in light. It was built to spot a very specific pattern, a signature that, as far as we knew, nothing else in nature could possibly make. And then it happened. In the dead of night, September 22nd, over a totally empty stretch of ocean between Africa and Antarctica, the bangometer on Vela 6911 saw exactly what it was built to see: a double flash of light. And just like that, alarms start blaring in quiet, secure rooms all over the world, kicking off one heck of an investigation. Okay, so what did the satellite actually see? What was in that data? Well, the thing is, the raw data was, well, it was crystal clear. It was pointing overwhelmingly in one direction, and it set off an absolute scramble inside the U.S. intelligence community. Take a look at this. This graph shows what's called the double hump light curve. It's the unique fingerprint of a nuke. So first, you get this incredibly bright, super short flash from the explosion itself, right? Then, the shockwave expands and it actually blocks the light for a split second. But as that shockwave cools and turns transparent again, boom, you see the second, longer flash from the glowing fireball. Now, before this night, the Vela satellites had seen that exact same signature 41 times. And right there, that's the problem for the analysts. 41 detections meant 41 confirmed nuclear tests by countries like the US, the Soviets, China. The system had a perfect 100% track record. The data from the bang meter was basically gospel. So, what on earth was different about this time? And it wasn't just the satellite. Other things started popping up. The huge Arecibo radio telescope in Puerto Rico, it picked up a weird disturbance in the ionosphere, right on time. The Navy's underwater microphones detected sounds that were later described as unique to a nuke going off in the ocean. And get this, later tiny traces of iodine-131, which is a key byproduct of fission, were found in sheep in Australia, which would be consistent with fallout. The case for a bomb just kept getting stronger. But here's the twist. Just as the intelligence community is stacking up all this evidence, a totally different story starts taking shape, coming from the very top of the U.S. government. And there it is, the official conclusion. President Carter put together this blue ribbon panel of scientists to review all the data. And after months of looking at it, their public verdict was that the signal was probably not nuclear. This created a massive divide between the scientists on the panel and the folks in the intelligence agencies. So you end up with these two completely opposite explanations. You've got the CIA and the Defense Intelligence Agency on one side saying, look, it's the classic double flash, we have the underwater sounds, and we think the probability this was a nuke is 90% plus. But on the other side, you have the White House panel. They're focused on a tiny difference in the readings from the satellite's two sensors and the fact that Air Force planes flying through the area couldn't find any fallout. Their alternative explanation? Something they called a zoo event. A zoo event was basically their fancy term for, we don't know what it was, but it was weird. The theory they floated was that maybe a tiny little meteorite hit the satellite, kicking up a cloud of debris that just happened to reflect sunlight into the sensor in a way that perfectly, mimicked a nuclear bomb. Yeah, to a lot of people in the intel world, that sounded pretty far-fetched. And this is where the mystery really deepens into a political thriller. Jack Verona, a very senior guy at the Defense Intelligence Agency, he did not hold back. He flat out called the report a whitewash and said the whole thing was driven by political considerations. Which of course begs the question, why would the White House want to cover up a nuclear test? Well, to answer that, you have to look at who the intelligence agencies thought was behind it. Because if it was a bomb, the list of potential culprits was very, very short. This is straight from President Jimmy Carter's own diary. written on the day of the flash. His mind immediately went to two countries, apartheid South Africa and its close military ally Israel, and the location, way out in the middle of nowhere, the perfect spot to test something you don't want anyone to see. You see documents like this, and you can feel the intensity of the investigation. All those blacked out lines hide the details, but the direction is obvious. The CIA was digging hard into the prime suspects. Those black bars, they really represent the heart of the whole political problem. So let's break it down. South Africa was close by, and everyone knew they were trying to build a bomb. Israel was believed to already have a nuclear arsenal, but they'd never actually tested one, and the two of them had this incredibly tight, secret military alliance. In fact, we now know from declassified files that back in '75, Israel's defense minister literally offered to sell South Africa nuclear warheads in 3 sizes. So, the CIA's top theory was that this was a joint test. And that gets us right back to the motive. If the United States knew that one or two of its allies had just secretly broken international law and tested a nuke, why on earth wouldn't they just say so? You have to understand, President Carter was in an absolutely impossible political spot. Stopping the spread of nuclear weapons was a cornerstone of his presidency. He was fighting to get the massive SALT II arms treaty with the Soviets through the Senate. The Iran hostage crisis was about to blow up. And he had a tough re-election campaign looming. A secret nuclear test by an ally would have been a diplomatic nightmare, a complete disaster for his entire foreign policy. Think about it. He would have been forced to slap sanctions on his allies. His opponents would have screamed that his arms control efforts were a failure. It would have created a huge international crisis at the worst possible moment. The zoo event theory, as unbelievable as it seemed, offered a way out. It created official doubt, allowing the White House to just close the book on it. But Carter's private diary, it tells a totally different story. 5 months later, while his administration is publicly pushing the zoo event idea, he writes this. His private belief was that Israel did do it. The public story and the classified reality were moving in 2 completely different directions. And that leaves us right here. The Vela Incident became this ghost in the machine, an event that all the evidence says happened, but was never officially real. And it makes you wonder, in the high-stakes game of geopolitics, is choosing to ignore an inconvenient truth really any different from telling a lie? It's a single flash in the dark that ended up revealing so much about the complicated dance between intelligence, science, and power.